Good evening, campers. All right, so this class is called Presidents of the United States, and I originally did this for the homeschoolers of Maine back last year. And how many people have heard the expression that the United States President is the most powerful person or man in the free world? Is that in your Constitution? No. I hate when I hear that, because people, but besides, what's the free world? If I go to England and I make comments about certain groups of people, simply from a biblical perspective, I can lose my job, go to jail. In Sweden, you go to jail. That's not freedom, right? So where's, we have, in some parts of the world, there's more freedoms than they have over the years. But to use that term, free world, I don't know even what that means anymore. There was a basketball player called World Be Free. You remember him? I wonder what ever happened. Anyway, anybody know what this is, what this place is? With a hand. All right, Mount Rushmore. Who's on there? Anybody know? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Who else? Wait a minute. One person answer. We got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. Who's the other guy? Yes, sir. In the green, or the lime green. Yes. You had your hand up. Who? Nope. You get the last name right. Yes, sir. Theodore Roosevelt. How about the last guy? Yeah. You put your hand up, right? No, you put it down? Okay, where's Marley? Marley, tell me, who is it? Who's the last one? Anybody? Abraham Lincoln. Okay, very good. By the way, there are no Masonic treasures hidden in the back. Remember that movie? There aren't any treasures there, I guarantee you. Just a bunch of rocks. All right. So, where do we find the powers and duties of the President of the United States? Where do we find that? Yes, sir. Yeah, but where? By the way, that's a good answer. There's a lady running for Congress in Virginia, and I approached her in front of a minor league baseball park, and I said, where do you find the job description of a member of Congress? She didn't know what I was talking about, so I had her, well, where would you find the duties and responsibilities of a member of Congress? And she said, online? She had no clue. Thankfully, she didn't win. She won the primary as a Democrat, but she didn't win the final election. But most people have no clue. Where do you find the powers and duties in what part of the Constitution? Anyone know? Any campers know? Any young? You all have constitutions. You're supposed to bring them with you to every class. This isn't a secret here. Mrs. White was most disappointed because her students should know exactly where it is.
I am truly disappointed in all of you.
Yeah, I tell you what, come on. Look, one camper is fishing for her Constitution. We thought, all of you probably before lights out, we know are reading your Constitutions and discussing it amongst you, right? That's what you talk about all the time. Stop talking about senseless things for a change. We're tired of all the seriousness. Come on, someone find your Constitution. Look it up. I wish we didn't hide them in the bags like...
Maybe you should get a key.
Yes, who has a hand up? Yes.
Amendment 16.
No. We're looking at the part of the Constitution, in the original, before the amendments. Yes, ma'am. Get up, stand up, and look back at your contemporaries and shame them. Article 2. Thank you. Does anybody know what Article 1 is about? Yes.
The right to keep and bear arms.
No. Article 1. Yes, sir. No, that's Article 2. I know it's hot. It's a hot day, huh? Maybe we should just open the pool, everybody go for a swim, huh? Then come back to the class. Article 1 is the, yes.
Legislative powers.
Thank you, thank you. Or what's another description for legislation? Legislative. What's another word? What's another term? Congress, thank you, okay.
Anyone want to make a guess about Article 3?
Yes,
Judicial branch.
you got it, thank you. All right. The president was never supposed to be the most powerful person anywhere. The president, under Article 2 of the Constitution, defines the duties and powers, and there aren't that much. There ain't that much, to use proper colloquial English, right? And that's because Congress was set up to be the most powerful branch, because they're the ones that make the laws, they're the ones that appropriate funds, they're the ones that can impeach the president, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the duties. So the question is, how is a president chosen? Who can become president? How long does a president serve? How can a president be removed? And what are the powers and duties of a president? So how is a president chosen? Anybody know? By a secret meeting? No. Yes.
Elections.
Can you elaborate on that?
Like the people who would go to
We do vote for the president, but we don't actually vote for the president in the strict sense of the word. What do we do, Mr. Marley?
We have an electoral college.
Why don't you stand up?
Electoral college.
Electoral college, isn't that a place where you go to get a degree? Electoral college?
No, we get votes in the electoral college. You get 2 senators, and then a certain amount of other votes based on the population of your state, and like smaller states with less population are still represented.
All right, so there are 435 members of the House, 100 senators. So there's 535 plus, I think DC has 3. So 500 and, what did he say, 38? Those are the electoral votes. In order to win an election, you have to have at least 270. So when you go to vote, if you live in New Hampshire, you go to vote, you're going to vote for your person of choice. If that person of choice happened to be Donald Trump, let's say in the last election, he has to win the majority of votes to get New Hampshire's 4 electoral votes. He didn't get enough. He came close, but not close enough. So I'm going to read right from the Constitution. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in Congress. But no senator, representative, or person holding an office of trust or public under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So an elector is somebody that's usually chosen by the party at their convention, state convention. And that could be someone who's actively involved, and we don't even know sometimes who the electors are, you know. So that's how it's done. And so this last election, Donald Trump not only got the electoral vote enough to win, but he also got the popular vote. But the presidents don't always win by popular vote. I say this analogy, for example, let's say the Red Sox and Yankees have a 3-game series. Game 1, the Yankees beat the Red Sox 20-0. The next 2 games, the Red Sox win 1-0 and 1-0. The Yankees scored 20 runs, Red Sox only scored 2. Shouldn't the Yankees win all 3 games? Well, no, because that's that 1 game you lost. So California has what, 53 plus electoral votes. New Hampshire has 4. It's based on the population when it comes to the House of Representatives, and then all states have 2 members of the Senate. Okay, so Article 2, Section 3 was changed by the 12th Amendment. Electors would meet in their states and vote for 2 persons. One at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. So at one point, the person that came in second place was the vice president. That happened with Adams and then Jefferson. And after that, I think it had to do with the vice president, Aaron Burr, the electors will choose 2 separate persons, one for president and one for vice president. The vice president has to have the same qualifications as the president to win, to qualify. In other words, he has to be natural born, has to be a certain age, and we'll go into that in a few seconds. So 35 years old, that's how old a president has to be. A natural born citizen, that means somebody who's either born in the United States, and just an example, let's say my mother and father were stationed in Germany during, let's say they were in the army, and I was born over there while they were serving under the U.S. flag. I'm a U.S. citizen, I would be considered natural born, because I'm born under the, say, what they call under the U.S. flag. I think there's been I think there was one, was it McCain that was born in?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was considered a U.S. natural born citizen. What's that?
Yes, he was asking, was he really eligible?
Yeah. You also have to live in the United States for 14 years, continuously. Now, let's say that I'm born in Boston. My parents took me to Europe, and I grew up in Europe. 30 years later, I come back, and they want to run me for president. Oh, actually, maybe 35 years later, because I'm not old enough, 30, right? I'm a natural-born citizen, but I've raised in Europe. I've got all those crazy European values. Socialism, I think we should probably have a king or a queen. I think the world is coming to an end because of climate change. Of course, a lot of people in this country feel that way. So that's why, because we may not, someone who may have been born here, but if is raised under another culture, would not share the same, which something has become known as American exceptionalism. How long does a president serve? The president has a 4-year term. The original Constitution did not limit how many terms a president could serve. George Washington stepped down after 2 terms, setting a precedent, P-R-E-C-E-D-E-N-T, even though other presidents, up until an amendment, they could run for more, but they did. They say, hey, we're just following Washington's model. Franklin Roosevelt was the only president that served 4 terms. He didn't live long into his 4th term. And the argument was, well, we're in the middle of a war, so you don't want to change horses in the middle of a war. Even though there were Republican candidates against him, he didn't win. So the 22nd Amendment limited the President of the United States to 2 4-year terms, and no more than 10 years. So let's say that someone died in office, vice president, he's now president. Let's say that office, the term expires in a year and a half, and then he's president for 2 4-year terms. So he can serve more than 8 years, but no more than 2 full 4-year terms. I know that there's some people that are talking about Trump running a 3rd term, but I just don't think that's because he's going to be about 95 years old by then, right? So, no, actually, he's going to be about 83 or so. How can a president be removed? Well, number 1, death. Number 2, resignation. There was one president that resigned. Anybody know who that was? Yes, sir. Nixon, that's very good. I wish I had some camp bucks because I'm all out, yeah. A lot of people think he was impeached and was removed by impeachment, but no, he resigned. He would have been impeached. Whether or not he would have been removed after being impeached is we don't know. Impeachment and removal by 2/3 vote of the Senate. Now, under the 25th Amendment, it can be a little confusing. Prior to the 25th Amendment, if a president died, or if a vice president died, there was no way to replace that. Or when a president died and the vice president assumed the duties, there was a vice presidential vacancy, because that's one of the defects of the Constitution. What do? You don't have a vice. There's no way to do that. The 25th Amendment changed that. It also said that if a majority of the members of the presidential cabinet plus the vice president say the president is insane or not capable of the office, they can appeal to Congress, and then that president can be removed. That's never happened. I know that under Biden administration, a lot of people are talking about it, but you have to have, it's unusual for partisan party politics to actually do something like that. With Nixon, there were many Republicans that said, Mr. President, you need to step down, you need to resign. So a lot of Republicans say, hey, you don't have a good case here. This Watergate thing is pretty bad. Although this one, stuff that done by Obama and Biden to make Watergate look like a parking ticket, you know? So, okay. What are the duties, powers and duties of the president? I think there's only about 9 or 10. Mrs. White, am I about right? 9 or 10 powers and duties? About 9 or 10 powers and duties of the president, maybe a few more. Not a whole lot. Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and the militia of the several states when called into actual service of the United States. And earlier today, Pastor Whitney said we really don't have a true militia, and that's another topic for another class. Maybe you can do one like that next year, right? The National Guard isn't really the true militia. Grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. So if I commit a crime in New Hampshire and I go to jail in New Hampshire under New Hampshire law, President Biden can't do anything about it. He might call the governor and say, hey, gee, Hal's a really good guy. You really think I'd love it if you just give him a pardon. But if I committed a federal crime, and he can pardon me, okay, just if it's a federal crime. What did Biden, he's given pardons to thousands of people. Now, there are some people that should be pardoned. I believe in the concept of mercy. But there are some people that should not be pardoned. I think most of the January 6 people should have never been prosecuted to begin with. So they deserve, the guys that committed violence, maybe not so much, but those who were there taking selfies, they should have been pardoned. No question about that. Make treaties with advice and consent of the Senate, and you need 2/3 of the Senate needed. Now, a treaty is a binding agreement between two sovereign governments, two countries. And we're kind of getting away from treaties. And by the way, the treaties do not supersede the Constitution. A lot of people say, oh, the treaties are the highest landlord of the law. All treaties have to be made in pursuance of the Constitution. So, for example, the United States can't make a treaty with Communist China saying that we'll disarm the United States, the citizens of the United States. They can't do it. That's not the... Treaties are usually dealing with trade, immigration, visas and that sort of thing. Okay, so and many treaties go well beyond. But lately we've been going into agreements. What was the one to climate, the one in
Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement.
The agreement. That's something the president made with a bunch of people at the UN and came back and said this is policy. It's not law, but that's what they do. Like the free NAFTA. NAFTA was an agreement. It should have been a treaty. Right? So because it's hard to get 2/3. It's hard to get 2/3. And I'm not a mathematician, but I tell you what, that's my favorite fraction. 2/3 and 3/5. Because it's so hard to get an amendment passed and to get 2/3 of vice consent of the Senate. Appoints ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court with a majority vote of the Senate. So all you need is 51, in order to do business, you need a quorum of 51. So you can have less than 51, but you need at least 51. And I kind of enjoy some of the videos of the hearings of John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana. He'll ask some of these Biden appointees or Biden's handless appointees, what does the First Amendment tell us? Geez, I never dealt with that one in my 50 years on the bench, I mean, it's really horrible, some of these people. Or, can you define a woman? Well, I'm not a doctor. How would I know that, It's really laughable, but it's laughable at the same time it's tragic, right? Fill vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. So there are times when you can fill a vacancy without the approval of Senate, but it's only for a short time. Ed Martin, I think is an example. Ed Martin, who was someone that many of us know, he was appointed what was the position of the DC attorney of DC district? It was a temporary, and he was not. There was a neocon Republican that said, "I don't like him," but now he's in a better position. But he's a friend of ours. He's a great guy. He said, "Oh, I texted him. He said, congratulations," and then I said, "Oh, too bad you didn't get that." But he said he's in a better place now anyway. Give from time to time a State of the Union to Congress. How often do presidents give State of the Unions now? Anybody know? Usually in January, right? Although he could do it just once. He could do it once in 4 years. He may not even have, but it says from time to time. Doesn't say he could do one every week if he wants. So, but usually do it once a year. Okay, recommend to Congress measures and he shall judge necessary and expedient. Convene both houses or either of them on extraordinary occasions. Adjourn Congress, that's a great thing to do, right? Oh boy, you know. I have a friend who's a state senator, and I said, every vote you make is no, except to adjourn. He said, no, I want to have a perfect no. I voted not to adjourn. So, receive ambassadors and public ministers, and we see Trump doing that all the time. You remember he brought the president of South Africa in the White House, and Anissa was all smooth. Hey, you're committing genocide. Oh, he didn't. And he showed a video. Oh, that was tough. Oh, they didn't. Some of the people didn't like that. Commission all officers. So if you're in the military, from a lieutenant on, first lieutenant on, he's involved in commissioning. Now, he's just going to sign, and he doesn't go after, hey, who's this guy? Lieutenant Shurtleff here, and he's probably not going to look into it. He just said it was recommended, I'm going to approve. He's not going to go into every little detail. Take care. This is his most important job, by the way. Take care that the laws are executed and enforced. So do we have laws against people coming in here illegally? We do. The last president allowed millions of people. Not only did he not enforce the laws, he violated, or his handlers violated them. They encouraged people to come in. And not only did they come in, but they gave them stuff. They gave them free hotels and lodging and food. And in Massachusetts, they were actually delivering food to the hotels. And the hotels made contracts with the federal government to house these illegals. They weren't even people that want to get a room for a night. I'm sorry, we're booked for the next year. They were getting dental. They were getting people delivering their pizza and picking up their laundry. Gee, if I was an illegal, I'd want to come in here too. Yeah, just a comment.
Diapers and free formula.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And we paid for it. Let's see. Okay. All bills passed by Congress must be signed by the president. If he vetoes a bill, Congress can override it with a 2/3 vote. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen on occasions. So. That's it. No, the first president, it's like a trivia question. Who was the first president of the United States? People say, George Washington. And some people say, no, it wasn't George. It was me and John Hanson, right? Who was John Hanson? Well, our first Constitution was the Articles of Confederation. We didn't have an executive branch back then. Congress set up committees to handle problems. At one point, there were 99 committees. That's a problem in itself, isn't it? By the way, do you know what a giraffe is? The definition of a giraffe? It's a horse invented by a committee. The president of the Articles of the Confederation was secretarial in nature. No true authority over committees. The first president was John Hanson from Maryland, but he was not the president of the United States. He was the president of the Congress. So it's sort of a trick question, but in the strict sense, he wasn't it's like I'm the president of the Sam Blumenfeld Literacy Foundation. So am I a president? Yes. But I'm not the president of the United States. I'm a president of a little foundation. That's a whole big difference. Okay, and they only served 1-year terms. So Donald Trump is the 47th president, but there have only been 45 men who served as president. So how's that possible? Anybody know? Yes. Yeah. Well, your hand was up, but I pointed right at you. What's that?
You got 2 terms.
Non-consecutive terms. The first one was Grover Cleveland. By the way, in my opinion, he was the last good Democrat. And that was many years ago. And of course, Donald Trump, he was the 45th and 47th. So they served 2 non-consecutive. That's why you see that it wasn't 45, 46, 47. It's 45 and 47. Now, the vice presidents don't get a lot of recognition unless the president dies, for the most part, right? At one point, the vice presidents are the president of the U.S. Senate. And at one point, I'll handle it in a second. At one point, like John Adams, he would preside over the Senate all the time. And I'm not sure when they stopped doing that. I think when they started building golf courses. That's what I think. I'm not sure about that, but the only time you'll see a vice president hanging around the Senate is when there's a tie. And their power is to cast the deciding vote. The only time a vice president can vote in the Senate is when there's a tie, and our vice president has done that several times, 4 or 5 times recently. John Adams was the first vice president that became president, then Thomas Jefferson. John Tyler, after the death of William Henry Harrison, he was the first vice president to assume the office after the death of a president. And by the way, his grandson just died recently. Can you believe that? Here's a man who died in 1862, and he had a grandson that just died a few months ago, I think. So it's pretty fascinating, isn't it? That shows you how young a country we really are. Millard Fillmore, after the death of Zachary Taylor. Andrew Johnson, after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Chester A. Arthur, who was from Vermont, after the assassination of Garfield. Boy, it's kind of dangerous to be a president, huh? A lot of them have been assassinated. Thankfully not many lately, but they tried to. Theodore Roosevelt, after the assassination of William McKinley. Calvin Coolidge, after the death of Warren Harding. We'll be visiting Silent Cal's homestead, some of it will tomorrow. Harry Truman, after the death of Franklin Roosevelt. Lyndon Johnson, after the assassination of John Kennedy. Richard Nixon was elected after he was vice president under Eisenhower. He ran for president unsuccessfully against Kennedy, and in '68 he won, and he served 2 terms. And he resigned, and Gerald Ford took his place as he was the vice president, and George H.W. Bush, who served as Reagan's vice president, and of course our favorite Joe Biden, who served as vice president under our other favorite Obama, and he became president in 2020. The only president who was never elected, president or vice president, was Gerald Ford from Michigan. Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned. He had some scandal involving IRS, and there was a few other things. So he resigned, and he was appointed. He was elected by the Senate, and when the Senate chooses, for the vice president. When the Senate votes for vice president, they vote by the state. So Massachusetts, whether it's 9, they have to agree on. So it has to be either a 5-4 vote. So they vote by state. And he assumed the presidency when Nixon resigned, and then they chose Nelson Rockefeller. And if you're ever a president, don't choose a Rockefeller to be a vice president, because someone's going to try to shoot you. They tried to assassinate him on 2 occasions. And father and son teams. George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. John Adams and John Quincy Adams. And by the way, John Adams is my second favorite next to George Washington, for many reasons. Not necessarily what he did as president, but because without him, there may not have been a Declaration of Independence. Without him, we wouldn't have got all that funding from Holland. He borrowed money from the Dutch. That's quite an impressive feat in itself, right? And you know how we paid it back with Holland? We gave them land. And so the Holland government would actually sell land to their citizens, and they would relocate to the United States. That's why if you go to Western New York, you'll see Holland or Dutch land office buildings, historical mine. That's what they did. We had plenty of land. Grandfather, grandson, William Henry Harrison. Now, William Henry Harrison, if my memory serves me right, he gave like a 3-hour inaugural address. He got sick and he died a few months later. The moral of the story is when you're making a speech or a presentation, especially on a hot day, don't speak too long. All right? And Benjamin Harris, he was the first guy, I think, he loved Christmas trees. I think he was the first one to introduce Christmas tree to the White House. Presidents that were impeached. Now, a lot of people get this confused. They think impeachment means he was kicked out of office. Impeachment is basically like an indictment. The House of Representatives serves as a grand jury, serves as the prosecutors, and they present evidence, and all they need is a simple majority. Then they go to the Senate. The Senate acts like a jury, and they determine whether or not a president can be impeached, and you need a 2/3 margin. Johnson, who simply was not buying into the radical Republicans' plan to transform the country, 1 vote saved him from impeachment. And they had some really crazy, I forget, it was a Benjamin Wade that was going to take his place, and we don't know what would have happened to our country. Then it was Bill Clinton, and it was interesting. I remember I was involved in the impeachment, the campaign to get him impeached, very much so. We had a 1-800 Leave DC. That was the 800 number people would call when they would want information about our campaign to impeach Bill Clinton. And we had John McManus on C-SPAN making the case, and I don't even think we mentioned any of his affairs. It was all dealing with treason, giving Chinese communists some high-tech to build the high-tech aircrafts and other things. And then there was Trump. He was impeached twice. I think both of them were shams, especially the second one was the biggest sham of all, and he was able to beat them back. Presidents chosen by the House of Representatives. Under the Constitution, Article 2, if there's not enough electoral votes, then it's thrown into the House of Representatives. And Thomas Jefferson and John Quincy Adams were the two that were voted by the House of Representatives. Youngest and oldest. Oh, I put Teddy Roosevelt. That's a mistake. At the time, he was the youngest. It was John Kennedy. He was 43, and he was assassinated when he was 46. And I think Biden is the oldest, 80 or so years old? And I made this presentation for people in Maine. So candidates for president from Maine, James Blaine and Neil Dow. Neil Dow was the head of the Prohibition Party. Anybody know what Prohibition back then means? Yeah. In Maine, by the way, was a dry state long before the amendment, the 18th Amendment was passed. You know, interesting, we have 27 amendments to our Constitution, right? But one nullifies the other. So technically, we only have 25. But when you have them in there, they're still in there, but one canceled the other out. And the only presidential candidate from, vice president from Maine was Hannibal Hamlin. Okay, so that's all I have, and so I gave you some extra time. Who's going to run for president of the United States? Anyone here in this room plan to? And who plans to run for president of the United States here? Okay, good. Marley. Marley's going to be president, right? Maybe. But you were born under the U.S. flag, weren't you? So you're a foreigner? But your dad's a U.S. citizen, isn't he? No, all right. Any questions? If not, then we'll see you at campfire. Thank you.